What happened? Where is he?
We're here at LucasArts, far away from the show floor. It's quite silent in here, except for the Star Wars music outside. We're here with Hayden from LucasArts, and we have taken a look at the Star Wars Force Unleashed. And I actually managed for longest time. I never finished Force Unleashed, I have to admit. I managed to have the ending unspoiled until today. So big spoiler warning here before you keep looking at this. But didn't Starkiller die?
Yeah, so at the end of the first game, Starkiller, who starts out as Darth Vader's secret apprentice, he ends up forming the Rebel Alliance through some twists and turns in the story, and then he sacrifices himself to protect that fledgling alliance.
And how do you sort that out with a sequel?
Well, so we looked at a lot of different options. We looked at potentially creating a new character or telling a story in a different time period. But ultimately, we really felt like we still had stories to tell around the Starkiller character, and we wanted to bring him back. So we looked at the Star Wars fiction, and there is a way to resurrect characters in Star Wars, which is cloning. However, we knew that would be polarizing for fans. Some fans would love it. Some fans might not like it so much. So we decided to use that tension to our advantage. So very early in the game, Darth Vader tells Starkiller that he's a clone. However, after Starkiller kind of goes on the run and starts his own personal journey in Force Unleashed 2, he runs into one of his Jedi mentors from the first game, a character named General Coda. And Coda tells him that it's impossible for him to be a clone, that Jedi can't be cloned, that Darth Vader's lying to him. So we kind of play with this notion of is he or isn't he a clone throughout the whole game, and it creates a lot of tension, I think, for for the story.
And generally, when it comes to the story and polarizing fans, you already upset some people when suddenly, all of a sudden, comes a secret apprentice, and not only that, he's one of the most powerful Jedi ever. How do you keep going with that in Star Wars Force Unleashed?
Yeah, so we actually didn't get a lot of negative reaction from fans to this idea of Darth Vader having a secret apprentice. I think the time period that we're in, so little was known about it. The time period between Episode 3 and Episode 4. I think that most fans really embraced the idea that Darth Vader would take a secret apprentice. So, and we thought it was a cool fantasy that players would want to play. So we're definitely bringing back Starkiller. His role is not necessarily as Darth Vader's secret apprentice anymore. He's much more of a fugitive in this game, and he kind of goes on the run. And in terms of the Force Unleashed, the way we're portraying the Force, I was actually very worried about that going into the first game, that fans wouldn't accept these kind of over-the-top Force powers. But because it's the way that we portray the Force throughout the game, and everybody with Force powers has these kind of over-the-top abilities, I think, again, everybody kind of embraced that. And that core fantasy of being a superhero in the Star Wars universe, I think, really resonates with people.
When it comes to the actual gameplay of the Force Unleashed, because it's sold incredibly well, it's the fastest-selling Star Wars game ever, and I don't know how many millions is it now?
We're well over 7 million copies.
Yeah, that's quite a lot. Yeah. But at the same time, from some critics, they didn't get really good criticism, camera problems, control problems, blah blah blah. What have you taken from that criticism into Star Wars Force Unleashed 2?
There was definitely a lot of things that we knew we wanted to work on for Force Unleashed 2, things that the critics said, things that consumers said, things that we all felt we wanted to improve. So one of the big areas we focused on was targeting. We made it easier to see what you have targeted, easier to target specific things. Grip in particular, using Force Grip, we really streamlined that and made that a little bit more accessible, and worked on targeting relative to Force Grip and when you pick up things and throw it. The camera, we took a lot of the feedback to heart about the camera, and we're especially in boss battles, and we've really worked on the camera in boss battles and made sure that it was positioned in a way that provided a kind of a cinematic feel, and you really get the size and the scope of and the sense of scale in the boss battles that we want without losing the character. So those were some of the big areas, and then we also focused on what we did right and wanted to make sure that we did that even better. So story was obviously one of the things that really we did well in the first game, and we wanted to do it well again in the second game. So we focused on telling a more personal story, a darker story. In some ways, this is our Empire Strikes Back. Back, you know, it's darker and more personal than the first game, much like Empire Strikes Back is darker and a more character-driven story than maybe the original A New Hope. And then, you know, in the over-the-top force powers, so we've added new force powers, we've redesigned the combo system, we redesigned all the force powers from the ground up, and then the enemies as well, so that the AI really provides you with a tactical challenge.
What's it like working with a more darker side of Star Wars? Because that's been done in other... we've had Force Unleashed, of course, and other parts of the franchise with various books, even zombies now in Death Troopers. How's that been? How's the reaction been to fans? From the fans when it comes to the darker side?
So far, I think it's very positive. You know, I think everybody likes the dark side a little bit. You know, and Darth Vader is such a cool and compelling character that, you know, the idea of having Darth Vader play a prominent role in the story, I think, again, is really compelling to fans. You know, everybody likes the underbelly of Star Wars too, and you know, characters like Boba Fett and some of the other, you know, darker characters from the Star Wars saga. So you know, for us, it's really fun because it allows us to, you know, take Star Wars in some, you know, potentially different directions, and that battle of good versus evil is really the heart of Star Wars in many ways.
You have served your purpose well, my apprentice. But I have no further use for you. Kill him.